F50 Global Capital Summit, the big Austin 2030 Investor Roundtable. I want to welcome all the speakers, particularly most of the speakers are from Austin, Texas right now. Today is our first day of our conference, 6th Annual F50 Global Capital Summit, hosted virtually from Austin, Texas for the very first time, and will be for the next many years, spring and from Austin. Welcome and thank you. So today, our topic is about Austin 2030. What does it look like for Austin 10 years later? Because Elon Musk said Austin is the largest booming town in America for the next 15 years. That is January, we just moved to Austin, and this year had been an exciting journey. And this event, we received lots of different support. First, I want to introduce my two co-hosts who are moderating this session together. First, CS.
Hi there, great to be here.
Can you introduce yourself?
Sure, yes, I've been in Austin, Texas for 12 years now. Been working in the tech ecosystem, early stage startups. I spent 7 years at a tech venture studio, and now currently with the International Accelerator, helping to manage their portfolio and the platform of investors, mentors, partners, and all that. Also the creator of a venture capital membership club here in Austin for VCs, angels, and everyone in the ecosystem who are investors. And that's called VCAustin.club. Super excited for the topics we're going to cover today. Love to hear everyone's perspective. And yeah, excited to be here.
Okay, great. Thank you, CS. Now I want to introduce our second moderator, who is a brilliant founder, lived in Silicon Valley for many years, and just moved to Austin last year. Please welcome Max Marty.
Hi, I'm Max Marty. I lived in the San Francisco Bay Area for about 10 years, started half a dozen or more companies there during that time in all kinds of different spaces. And about a year ago, I moved to Austin when I saw the way that the winds were turning. I think many of us have seen some of that and seen that Austin is going to be the new forefront for companies, for entrepreneurship, for investing, for many years to come. So I am happy to be here, happy to be in Austin, looking forward to starting some new companies in Austin, and looking forward to helping to moderate this panel.
Okay, great. So we have some great investors today in the round table. First one actually is one of the very active venture LiveOak. Actually, this fund was selected as one of the most active venture fund in Texas by our team. Welcome, Krishna.
Thank you, David. It's great to be here. So I've been, been active in venture here well before it was even remotely fashionable in the current wave. So if somebody called me one of the original gangsters of the Austin venture capital scene, I'll take that to be a compliment. I actually came to Austin in the late 90s to go to graduate school in the engineering school here, and then left Austin, came back in beginning of 2000 to join a firm called Austin Ventures, which some of you would remember was clearly the most dominant and active by a wide margin as a venture capital firm in this market. I joined them in 2000 and survived through the crazy internet explosion, the bust, and then the financial market crisis in the 2008 timeframe, and spent a little over a decade at Austin Ventures. So definitely learned the venture business, investing in early stage Texas technology venture over the time period. In the 2011 timeframe, a couple of partners of mine and I looked around and said, gosh, we have tremendous conviction that should be a big surge in entrepreneurial activity in this market. It's got all the DNA. It's the second largest tech employer in the country, second only to California. One of the absolute world-class centers of learning right here in Austin in terms of STEM patterns and number of students coming out with STEM education across the state of Texas. It has all the, and of course, a very friendly business climate. This ought to be a powerful area of innovation in this market. And that's what prompted us to leave Austin Ventures and look to start a venture capital firm. We were not very, it was not a very fashionable concept then when we said, look, there ought to be incredible opportunity here. People didn't believe us, but we persevered. And that's how LiveOak came into existence. And the motivation then was, of course, and we can talk more about this, there is not much local capital here in this market. And we felt you could do some interesting things with the amount of talent pool. So LiveOak 1 was created, then we started investing in LiveOak 1 in 2013. Strategy being first money for world-class companies that come out of Texas, backing great entrepreneurs who are, again, based in Texas. We are active investors, always look to lead or co-lead an investment, look to take board seats in almost every company we invest in. So to date, we have invested in about 45 companies, all of that profile. We look to invest almost $10 million over the life cycle of a business with a first check between $1 and $4 million. And of course, the market is now caught up to our original bet. So it's exciting to be lucky more than smart in some sense with all the macro factors working in our favor. And we are looking to capitalize on 21 years now of experience here in this market with network and combine that with all the surge of amazing new talent to keep building up a terrific franchise over the decades to come.
Thank you, Krishna. So next, I want to introduce CEO of our partner for this event, International Accelerator. Eric, please welcome.
Sure. Well, thank you, David, for putting this panel together and inviting me to come be a part of it. So I am the Chief Operating Officer at the International Accelerator. Our accelerator is kind of unique in that we're pretty much one of the only accelerators that's focused on foreign-born founders and investors. So, we have been around since 2014, and we saw early on that there's a lot of talent abroad, and there's a very rich history of folks coming to this country, being involved in entrepreneurship, starting some of the biggest companies in the world, and we wanted to be a part of that. And so far, we have had a few successful exits we're very proud of. We help these companies come to Austin, get set up, get involved in the ecosystem here, meet folks like Krishna from LiveOak. And, we really are a little bit different than most accelerators because we are highly, highly selective. And we go by kind of the motto of a co-founder and not a cohort. So we like to get involved in every aspect of the business. We like to take the kind of grassroots approach, get in there on the nitty gritty with a co-founder and really, take them from a seed stage company all the way to Series A. We try to stick to companies that historically fit well with, the Austin market. Austin really developed over the past 20 years based on these tech companies coming here. And, we feel that our network of folks that have been around since, the beginning of Austin's really boom time allows us to focus on some of these B2B SaaS, these B2C SaaS companies that fit our investor network well, that have been here in Austin while it's grown. So my background is particularly in operations, obviously, in project management and engineering, and fits well within here at the accelerator and trying to get new companies in and growing them from seed to much, much larger. So thank you, David, for having me on here. It's truly going to be a pleasure.
Thank you, Eric. So let's welcome our next speaker, my old friend, actually. He was in Austin a few years ago. He checked many different cities in America and found Austin a very interesting city. Please welcome Pavan Kumar.
Thanks, David. Thanks for having me on this panel. And it's great to see Global Capital Summit moving to Austin. I've been attending GCS for the last 2 years. They have a great brand in Bay Area. Now they're coming into the most happening place of US, Austin, to unwind and do a lot of new things here. Very briefly, I'm an ex-founder, spent 3 decades in the corporate world. And for the last 7 years, I've been investing. I'm the founder of 3PM Ventures. We are primarily focused on tech startups. We bet on founders. We, as Krishna said, we signed the first check, and we help the founders. We pay alongside in a venture studio model, help them to grow and scale. 2018, I started my USA journey from Austin. I loved the place. When I came in first there, I saw a hidden ecosystem out there. And fortunately, I'm also co-invested with International Accelerator in one of the startups. 3PM as a company, we are invested in startups in India, in USA, as well as UK. And we have a couple of investments in Texas as well. Looking forward to an exciting conversation here and listening to the other panel members as well. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Pavan. We have another group of very good investors and speakers here. So let's have them do a very quick introduction about themselves. Let's start with Andrew.
Hi, David. Thank you. First of all, great to see Krishna and Han. We actually go back quite a few years. Real fast, I founded Rubicon Venture Capital. We've rebranded that as 7BC Venture Capital. We've made investments into about 75 tech startups, primarily in Silicon Valley, but also New York, across the US, Canada, a little bit of UK and Europe. We have invested in Austin companies and looking forward to doing that. I actually just relocated from Silicon Valley to Austin in January. So I've made the move. I actually was an operator first, founded a number of companies, even raised capital from Austin Ventures. Krishna, I know we were talking around the time that you launched LiveOak. I remember we had you on some of our panels in Austin in my book tours. But
yep.
I think I knew you at Austin Ventures. It seemed like everyone was ex-Austin Ventures on my VC panels maybe 10, 11 years ago. But anyway, very excited to be here. Started coming to Austin in 1993 when I took a job working for Ed Taylor at Pencom Systems, where we hired Frank King, who had developed standard query language at IBM here in Austin. So I think Austin has always been an exciting place. It's just like the world found out about it right now. So it's exciting to be back here.
Thank you, Andrew. So let me introduce our next speaker, who is a very active venture capitalist, also moved from Silicon Valley, Shen.
Hi, everyone. David, thanks a lot for having me for this conference. My name is Shen. I'm the founding partner of iFly. I have been in the venture business since 2009. Spent the first 7 years working for other firms, including Formation 8. Then 2016, started iFly. Our AUM is just a little bit short of $100 million. We focus on consumer tech, e-commerce, retail, supply chain, logistics, series pre-seed, seed, and series A. We either lead or follow. I spent the last 12 years in Silicon Valley and just moved here in Austin about 2 months ago. So for quite a while, I thought I would just spend the whole career and the rest of my life in San Francisco Bay Area until end of last year. I had a hard moment, just like a lot of you guys decided to move. And so feel very excited about the change. In the past, I used to come to Texas quite a bit. So I witnessed the change and fast development of Austin and other cities. Definitely seeing lots of energy and the vibe around people that have similar mindset for the startup ecosystem. So definitely very happy and proud to be part of this.
Thank you, Haynes. So next I want to introduce our long-term partner, supporter of our community, our events, my long-term friends, Royse. Roger, please introduce yourself.
Okay, well, thanks, David. It's good to be here. You'll be hearing a lot more from me later. So I'll just mention that I'm Roger Royse. I'm a partner with Haynes and Boone. I'm based in Palo Alto, but last year I joined the Texas law firm of Haynes Boone. We have an Austin office. We're growing in Austin, just like it seems like most of my clients are these days. So hope to do a lot more in the Austin area, and it's good to see all of you. You'll be hearing me on some panels on agriculture technology as well as legal issues for startups, especially startups in Texas. So we'll see you all again soon. Roger Royse, Haynes and Boone.
Okay, great. Now the real questions. Me and my co-hosts CS and Max actually prepared a loaded, challenging questions for all of you. So each question is optional for any of you. So we're gonna make, if you have an opinion, let's get started. If not, you can skip this question to the next question. I'll ask the first question to set up a stage, and then CS ask a couple Austin related questions, and Max ask a couple like Austin versus Silicon Valley type of questions. My question is very simple. What is Austin looks like in 2030? You can answer two ways. A is what you believe. B is what you hope to looks like, particularly for venture capitalists and startups. So same thing, since LiveOak has a long history in Austin, I'm gonna ask Krishna to answer this question first. The rest is whoever have answered, just jump in.
Yeah, obviously, some of you have done this too, voting with your lives here by moving here. I've done 21 years in this market. I've never been this excited about the next decade for this market. So I'm just incredibly excited about the possibilities ahead for this market and where it could be by 2030. Maybe it'd be good to give a little bit of a historical context, right? This was a vibrant market in 2000 timeframe. Obviously, peak companies like Civility came out of it in the 90s. Hotbed for enterprise software, semiconductors, etc., went through a bit of a lull subsequent to that. And now we are seeing it really thrive and really explode in terms of activity underway. And for us, the way we think about a market exploding is a combination of, the ultimate litmus test is, do you really have enough number of sizable standalone companies that come out of this market that could stand the test of time, and that launches an interesting life cycle of great next generation of entrepreneurs that it launches, who can then go and build next sets of companies out of that. So as I look forward to 2030, what I very much anticipate is there'll be many major companies that come out of it, who have gone public, who are not rolled into another corporation, who are leaders in their own right, and creating a place which is a pretty nice hotbed of innovation and subsequent entrepreneurship in those markets. Just as Cisco was in the 90s in Silicon Valley, and what Google and Facebook and many such great companies have spawned amazing alums to come out of them to do amazing things the last 15, 20 years in the Valley. What I expect by 2030 is we'll at least have half a dozen to a dozen standalone companies by then, which are in the billions of revenues here, which will hopefully spawn the next generation of entrepreneurship, which will create a multiplier effect of such activity here in this market of entrepreneurship by the time, say, 2040 rolls around, and we are poised on the precipice of that level of excitement happening in this market.
Great. Anybody else wants
to? Yeah, maybe I come in next, and Krishna said the whole thing, but I think something very exciting which is happening in Austin today, which would really trigger a massive shift when we reach 2030, is the tech pool which is coming into Austin through these companies which are coming in there, whether it is Tesla, Facebook, Google, Apple. all these companies are bringing huge talent pool into the city, and added to that, most of these companies' employees are, financially capable, and you will also see a lot of angel investing and whole sort of angel activity coming in, which is a bit lacking in Austin. I mean, given this ecosystem which is coming in to support the founders, support ideas, Austin always had a great educational institutions, and there's a lot of talent coming out of there. And added to that, this experience pool coming in, the angel investments coming in, and you would be seeing that most of the VCs which are active in Austin today are entrepreneurs, ex-entrepreneurs who made fortune out of their own startups, and they are now into investing, like Krishna and other individuals. So by 2030, you will see Austin as one of the major startup ecosystems. In addition to what we see in Silicon Valley today, and also a lot of international companies find it very comfortable to move into Austin, and we should be seeing a lot of good things happening out of Austin by 2030.
Hey, David, and I'll just kind of piggyback on what Pavan said as well. I think that, we're seeing Austin get a lot of influx from folks, not just from the West Coast, but from the Midwest, right? From New York, from the East Coast. And I think what's very interesting is Austin, I feel, is relatively new in terms of the venture capital scene. And we're seeing folks come here with maybe some of the mistakes that have been made elsewhere and saying, hey, we're not going to make those same mistakes here. We're going to be different. We're going to lead the way in social change. We're going to lead the way in making Texas, much more inclusive. And I think it's just an exciting place to be in that regard, that Austin is kind of getting a fresh start in terms of the venture capital scene. And, we're bringing a lot of lessons learned back, which is so critical for the development of an entire new ecosystem.
I would say, I'd be curious to hear what Krishna thinks about this, but historically, my experience in Austin were all very enterprise software. So Krishna, you mentioned Civility. It was the same team at Civility that basically ran Motive Communications. And so I was one of the first guys to start Motive. All the guys around me were all ex-Civility. And so this kind of enterprise software stuff, just by osmosis, seeps around. And they were very good at, we're going to get a logo of a customer. We're going to take that back to the VCs in Austin and then Valley. We'll raise another round. We'll get another customer. We'll raise another round. And they really had it down on enterprise. I think what's different now with all this mass migration, Austin is far less isolated than it was. Fast forward, to 2030, way less. I think everywhere is less isolated. Even Amsterdam is connected. Everybody's connected. So you're going to see it's not going to be all about Frank King, standard query language, IBM throwing people out after 18 months to not get sued for W-2 benefits, which was, I think, a big birthing of all that enterprise stuff. And guys would leave IBM, start a company, sell it back to IBM, and do it 3 times. I think that is the Tivoli story. So I think a big change will be way more diversified on the kinds of topics that entrepreneurs are starting and their investors are funding. So true excellence for enterprise software and a heritage of that. And it's probably our biggest passion at our fund. But I expect to see all kinds of consumer, absolutely anything happening here, more so than in the past.
Yeah, and you
another
well
interesting
said.
aspect I really love about Austin is the modesty of the founders. The valuations are, really quite, it's not to the extreme like what you generally see in Bay Areas. The founders are really modest. The valuations are reasonable. And, it's a great opportunity for new funds and new investors to come into Austin, pick some of these very early and exciting startups and back them.
Yeah, just to add a couple points to resonate with what everyone has talked about. I'm an immigrant. I came from China 23 years ago when I finished college. Spent time in Chicago, Philadelphia before moving to the Bay Area, then 12 years later moved to Austin. What I found among immigrants or migrants who moved across border or domestically, some of the common traits are, people are open enough to embrace new ideas and also audacious enough to embrace the risk, right? Because there's always uncertainty when people move around, even within the same country from state to state. But for those of us who have made the daring move from another state to Austin, what's already common about it is the risk-taking, that like-mindedness among people. And what I want to point out is the observation is not just among the tech workers, it's not just among startups or investment funds. There are many other segments or industries, big corporations, people are moving out of here. So as the population base grows, real estate developers, service providers, educators are also booming out of here. So when you have a larger base of population with lots of people who are risk-taking, sharing lots of interesting ideas, you would imagine there will be a lot of more restless entrepreneurs who want to get out of their comfort zone to start something new. And that's why I feel excited about the future of Austin being a major hub of entrepreneurs and startups ecosystem in the States and worldwide.
One of the things that came out of this conference that I learned that I didn't realize was how much Austin reminds me of what Silicon Valley used to be like in terms of having a big market, especially for the ag tech clients I work with, for having a big talent pool. And also, people don't think about this, but a university system that very much supports its entrepreneurial community. We did some panels, and it's really impressive how many tech companies can come out of the universities. So they'll not only incubate them, they will fund at least the initial stages through some university-supported and state-supported funds. So it's got all the right stuff. It has that perfect storm, to create a real center and grow it, especially with the help of some of the prominent VCs that are on this panel. You're on mute, David.
Thank you, everybody. So I'm going to turn our mic to our moderator, CS. Keep in mind, CS is very nice, but she prepared a couple pretty tough questions. CS, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to throw some curveballs at you. Make sure I get some thought-provoking topics for y'all. Well, yeah, of course. I know that many of you on this panel have been such a pillar in the Austin community, a couple of OGs, but when you're visiting other cities and you notice the ecosystem, we can call it like tier 1 or tier 2 cities even, what are you seeing there that maybe we're missing here in Austin? It could be like a mindset. Is it a type of network? You want to see more Series B here or early stage? For me, I like the operator VCs. I know there's like Bill Group in town, but want to know y'all's thoughts about that. What do we need here?
Well, I'll step in.
Oh, go ahead, Andrew.
Okay, thanks, Roger. I'll be brief. I think one of the great things about Silicon Valley, the only other place I've really seen it take off is China, where you've got not only investors for every single stage, so institutional pre-seed investors where they make 3-4 investments per week, whether they want to or not. If there's a recession, they're not returning money. They've got LP capital so that they can, fight through a recession, even if the nature is to go later stage. They said, we're investing in pre-revenue companies. So I think one thing the Valley has that's not so hard to replicate are the funds. Government can pour money in like they've done in France and Israel and just generate over a ton of VCs from pre-seed to late seed to seed extension, Series A, Series B, pre-IPO phenomenon, stay private forever, secondaries. What's not easy to do, and I think we're going to see it here, is big balance sheet buyers take off. So seeing Oracle move their enterprise over here, they're the biggest enterprise buyer of startups conventionally in my lifetime. So to be right next to the big balance sheet buyer and the investor, so you go to your kid's soccer game and the head of corp dev is right there learning about your company. So now there's offers to buy it, investors want to sell it, you get like an Instagram dynamic. So I think it would be good to see that take off. And if it doesn't happen fast enough, we just need to be like fiber optic connected to where the big balance sheet buyers are, and fiber connected to where there's many investors for every stage. Because the number one cause of death is running out of money. Right. I'll stop there. I think Roger.
I just want to offer one kind of, I guess, wonky technical thing to think about. The one of the reasons California has done so well historically is because the law really encourages employee mobility. And since I've been doing more stuff in Texas, I've been seeing non-competes pop up in agreements, things that we would just laugh at here in California. And that's one place where I think Texas does have to maybe update its laws and its practices a little bit, because a lot of these people are coming out of big industry and big companies, and we need to encourage that, not discourage it. That was the only thing I wanted to make sure I added here. Hopefully that movement can start right here.
Andrew said it quite well. When I think about maybe even 10 years ago when we kicked off LiveOak, I would tell you the bottleneck at that time was associated with, look, there was not early stage capital here. And folks like us kicked off and created early stage capital here in this market. And so that has fueled, maybe almost 100 companies have been funded in the early stages. The next bottleneck 3-4 years ago became, gosh, we wish we had a little bit more next stage of capital here in this market, became the second bottleneck there. And fortunately, we've had a lot of even growth firms moving down here. And so we've had a lot of growth, that's started to unlock the bottlenecks in Series B, Series Cs. And the secret is out about Austin. So we're seeing a lot more activity of firms showing up and spending time here. That's clearly underway. So that's the second part that's getting unlocked as we speak, but we can definitely get more Series Bs being here would indeed be very helpful for this market. The part that's still not there is definitely you'd like to see a lot more bigger companies being present here, the acquirers or companies that can spawn a lot more next generation of entrepreneurs in this business. Historically, companies have gotten picked up early in Austin and or they've become divisions of larger corporations, etc. So the corp dev, M&A teams have all not been based here. That's changing. We are definitely seeing more category creators, category leaders come out of this market. So that will naturally create the virtuous cycle associated with having a lot more of standalone businesses being here, which will create that corp dev, corporate venturing arms to be available in this market, combined with a lot more next generation of entrepreneurs being available.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, I want to talk about, since we were talking already about the corporates, and to kind of segue, we of course have to talk about pandemic some. I want to talk about the nerd bird. Does anyone miss the nerd bird? Who's ready to get back on, flight to Silicon Valley? I'm wondering, how fast or slow do you think things are going to be snapping back, going back to the office, or are they going back at all? And I want to mention that I saw a tweet somewhere that I will never be able to find again, but how startups are kind of like one-upping bigger tech companies. These companies aren't giving up their offices. And so now startups are kind of now gaining access to the talent of their dreams. Any thoughts about that?
I think it comes down to the company. So at the large level, you see Apple saying, you got to be in the office Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And we're using this like a bin Laden opportunity to fire the weak and get rid of a lot of people that they don't even want on the payroll. And then you've got other guys like Jack Dorsey Facebook, Amazon saying we'll grab a whole bunch of millionaires out of Apple that want to live in Lake Tahoe or Pebble Beach or Mexico or Cabo. So, that's what's happening at the corporate level. And, guys like Zuckerberg are saying, I'm not going to pay you the same salary in San Diego that you had up in Silicon Valley. So there's some of that'll maybe shake out when they all move jobs. And at the startup level, we speak to startups all day, right? Making investments, and each one has their story. They're either Apple or they're Twitter, meaning they either say, this is a geeky founder who culture proliferates into everybody in his company, and he doesn't like going to the office. And so it's work from home, save that money, don't even spend it. And other ones are the opposite. We're like Sparta. Everyone get in here or else you're fired. And so it comes down to, are you Apple or are you Twitter?
I think it all boils down to, who evolved a better business model and, adjusted the economics during this crisis. I think the companies which were able to leverage people working from home and, make better sense out of it, I think they will continue to adapt this model. And those, who have huge real estate, don't know what to do with it, put in a whole lot of investments in there. And again, it's all about bureaucracy. At times bureaucracy prevails. People want to have that control and want to have that, face-to-face interactions. But largely, I think most of the startups are adapting the new model, and they find it quite convenient, economical, and also, a way to scale as well, right? This model makes it far, far easier to find talent across the world and scale it easily. I think you will continue to see startups adopting it. I think larger corporates will somehow try to balance between letting people have that freedom as well as, limiting them to certain geographies so that they are accessible.
I think there are two benefits that's going to hit, that is already hitting Austin-based companies in this process. First benefit is companies have gotten used to remote working. So as a result, we are seeing large corporations looking to much more aggressively hire Austin workforce here that's underway. And because of which, they are expanding much more aggressively in the Austin market, because these teams don't have to be self-contained. They can actually collaborate with their teams available in these parts of in California, etc. So as a result, you're going to see a bigger Google presence, bigger Facebook presence, bigger blank, well-known company presence in the Austin market, because those employees can seamlessly collaborate with their teams elsewhere. Dynamic one. Dynamic number two is our companies, which used to be limited by a local talent pool in some specific areas, and now those talent pools are now available all over the country. So it used to be a bottleneck in terms of some critical talent hires that are required here. And our companies now who have managed to work in remote fashion in the last year can suddenly tap into talent pools on a nationwide, global-wide basis much more actively, which is going to unlock some talent availability, and they can grow faster, is what's happening too. So we see this both dual benefits coming across down the pike for our companies.
Yeah, so for my friends who are founders who are building the companies, I usually advise them not to make a decision only because some big name said, oh yeah, let's do this or not that. I think every company's situation can be different. I think everybody has to make up their own mind what's the best fit to adapt for the new normalcy post-COVID. But having said that, I think just out of a lot of the startups that we have seen and talked to recently, many of them seem to have a tendency of finding a new hub. And I tell them Austin can be perfect for that. If you think about it, Austin has a very strong and exciting local startup vibe, perfect for a home base. But if they do have remote workers, engineers located elsewhere, whether it's East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, by the flight time, it's all within 3.5 hours. So actually that logistics aspect makes it a lot more doable for startups to have a new model of having remote teams coming to work together. If people want to have a get-together time, Austin is perfect for that. So everybody flies more or less the same time to get together. And in fact, for us, to be based out of here in Austin, we do have quite a bit, activity in California. Our portfolio companies have made 2 trips by flying the Nuremberg back to California since we moved out here, and the flight was surprisingly packed. Right? So I think just in the future, we anticipate a kind of a new way of running business of even startup stage to be based out here in Austin, but have some more flexibility elsewhere to have a virtual team. So that's the take here.
Anyone else? David, should I do one more? Or how are we doing on time?
Go, Carl, you're the boss.
Go for it? Okay. Let's see here. So on the theme of Austin 2030, what advice would y'all give the next generation of venture capitalists, especially in the Austin scene, since we're experiencing such explosive growth now and over the next couple of years? And you could also answer the question, any advice that you would give yourself when you were younger? Tough question.
Okay.
All right, why not? Since such a pause there, that's one of the OGs here. I might as well take it. I think this business, having done it for 21 years, teaches you the most important lesson, which I tell my kids is, this is like running a marathon. It's absolutely not a sprint. So long-term relationships matter. It is not a transactional business. Austin in particular, I think, this is a very close, tight-knit, friendly community. So it is not a transactional community. So as a result, pay attention to relationships, help the broader community. The rising tide will raise all boats. Don't be self-centered around helping your own portfolio, your own firm. Think broader. Think about broader community entrepreneurial development. Help the entire ecosystem from accelerators, angel communities, venture peers, downstream investors, and good things will just naturally come out of it.
Love that.
Just a quick thought for investors. I think Austin is a great place, happening place, and timing is very apt. I mean, funds, investors, everybody should look at Austin startups with 2 perspectives. One is there's a huge talent pool and great ideas, great startups, and a great ecosystem out there. I mean, you'll be surprised. Austin, every second, third lane has an accelerator or an incubator. There's so much of work-life balance out there. And again, so much of supply coming in from educational institutions. So there's a great opportunity for investors globally to come into Austin. But at the same time, one thing which really lacks and where the investors can really support these founders is to take them beyond Austin, get them access to other markets where these funds perform, where they have their network, where they have their relationships, alumni and all. That is where investors can really come in and help Austin founders and startups to grow. That is a gap which I often see. I'm funded to a couple of Austin startups. The founders, to an extent, are limited in terms of their reach and their outlook to Austin or maybe Texas. But an investor from outside coming in, operating in this market would definitely help these founders to think big and think beyond and scale quickly.
Okay, how about let's move on? So we have one elephant in the room. It's called the Silicon Valley. And I just realized, my goodness, Andrew, Max, Han, we all came from Austin Valley, from Silicon Valley. So maybe ask Max send some tough questions between Silicon Valley versus Austin.
Yeah, my question here has to do with perhaps the elephant in the room that some of us may not yet have addressed. But to what extent has the politics of California, the politics of the Bay Area, or the legal environment of California affected the interest of people in leaving California and moving to a place like Austin, a place like Texas for their next ventures? Or is the politics and the legal, is that more of a sideshow and sort of downstream of culture and other things that matter more?
Okay, maybe before you answer the question, maybe a little bit advertisement. Actually, Roger's team actually did a pretty good panel discussion regarding the legal difference for corporate, for venture capital. I think there's one more law. It's about 30 minutes. It's very free, very advanced. Senior lawyers give you advice. Check out our YouTube channel, okay?
In that case, we can focus more on the political aspects.
Well, I guess I would say that I've been coming to Austin since '93 and know the place not just during South by Southwest, but throughout the year. And I didn't really feel like I could pull it off. Like my father didn't think he could do his job even in downtown Manhattan. He had to be in Midtown. So I think with COVID unfolding the way it did, I kind of thought I could still raise money around the world for my fund and deploy it anywhere, you know, we want to, and I can do it out of Austin. We're still keeping a team of 3 people in San Francisco, but there was a little bit of that. I don't know what it was like for you. I was completely disgusted with the government's response to COVID, and I was happy to get away from that. But I was happy to get away from some of the homeless, but we've got some pretty aggressive homeless people here too. I know that maybe will change, but politics was a driver for me to get away. But it was more of, this is the first time I believe I can do this here.
Okay, Max, believe it or not, I hate to talk politics. I really hate to talk about it. I'm going to tell you this, believe it or not, I know people who have left San Francisco because they don't feel safe. People who've been here for 10 years have said, I'm afraid to walk on the street. I'm not staying here anymore. It's just a very weird situation in this state right now, and it's not helping. Although if you saw the economic indicators this month, the economy is still doing well in California, go figure, despite all the bad things that happened the last year. But yeah, there's definitely a component that's aiding the great migration out. This state lost population in this last year. You know that? For the first time ever, it lost population. Isn't that incredible? You know,
and it lost a seat in the House, I believe.
Yes, it did, didn't it?
I think we gained one. Yeah.
This conversation, because we did lots of recordings. So again, so I assume lots of people here has bias to Austin, but I need to highlight a couple of things. We have a keynote speaker next week, Dixon Dorr. He's going to share lots of statistics you'll see very soon about venture capital investment. Actually, surprising enough that what you saw that so the economy in California has been pretty well, and despite the population lost, and also the venture capital investment increase in Q1 2021 is actually bigger than Austin, Texas. You will see the number. We already saw the number, but it will be published next week. So, and also the property price is also increasing. So the same Silicon Valley is doing fine. I'm just add some color to this conversation.
Yeah. And so a related question here is, for a lot of people, myself included, when I was living in Silicon Valley, the big companies that were there, the Googles and the Apples and all this, were competing, as we know, for a lot of the great talent that could otherwise be working in startups. And those companies became really good at figuring out how to hold on to their talent in the past decade. They've gotten better and better at it. So it becomes harder and harder for us entrepreneurs to wrestle that talent away from the very good compensation packages of all kinds that they're getting from those big companies. So as Austin becomes more entrenched with these big companies, that are moving more and more of their operations here, could that actually be a negative for Austin? It seems to me like, at least for a lot of people in Silicon Valley, that eventually became something of a negative, just the power and entrenchment of those big companies. Could we be seeing something similar develop in Austin?
I think that the reality is, when you're competing for talent against VMware, where they have like Gwen Stefani playing a band at Halloween at lunchtime, I mean, they're going crazy for the talent. It's hard because it's so damn expensive to live on the peninsula or in the city. Whereas Austin, you can survive on a startup salary a little more easily, or if you've got kids in school and stuff like that. So I think it could be a little bit less of an issue. But I was saying before, the big balance sheet buyers right next to the VCs and the entrepreneurs, I think, is a magic combination that's missing for most ecosystems. So to see that emerge here, $1 billion Apple campus, Oracle, Tesla, all that, I view that as a strong positive net. And I think that there was, even Krishna was saying that there was a bottleneck in talent pool here. We think of all this talent here, but there's some missing bits. So I think that serves a function to fill it in a bit more.
Yeah, I think we got a long ways to go on this item. So it's not about, I think there is plenty of, before we run into issues of, gosh, there are too many big companies here, it's going to take some time. So I'm not yet concerned about that at all. I think having more bigger companies, corporate headquarters, corporate dev being here, and all of that spawning another round of one more 10x growth and entrepreneurial activity here, are all super beneficial things that we'll all benefit from before we start running into those kinds of issues in this market.
Also, the local educational institutions, they produce great talent. Earlier, this talent used to move out for better jobs, in the East Coast, West Coast. I think a lot of that talent will now retain within the city, and there will be many opportunities opening up for all those institutions, great institutions which are producing some great talent in every field of education, whether it is technology, medicine, even otherwise on the financial side. So I think it will be a while before you really see that talent gap or crunch, but also this would bring in a lot of talent from other parts of the country into this city. I think overall Austin will continue to do good in terms of balancing the demand and supply.
And I think too that there will always be this group of individuals that is interested in entrepreneurship and interested in doing something bigger than, just getting a paycheck. And I think that it's actually kind of a plus that, a lot of this talent is coming this way, because eventually those like-minded folks will find each other and meet up, right? And be a catalyst for that next wave of change.
Yeah, I think when I was just talking to a few engineer candidates for some of the companies in the Bay Area, they are working for those, big camps like the Google, Facebook part of the world, very well paid. But at the same time, they have a huge expense for the living cost, mortgage, private school for the kids, and so on and so forth. These people got excited about moving to Austin because they recognize, even though the housing here is being, getting heated, but still overall net it's gonna cost a lot less for them to have a good life for themselves and families. So I think that is going to become a very important factor for the equation of assessing their next thing, right? So that they can have a lower pay, but still manage to provide for the family without major sacrifice. I think that is a factor that is making a lot of changes across the talent pool. Even for some of the Apple and Google engineers I was talking to who are based out here, they spent the last 7-8 years in the Bay Area, but they moved out here, but suddenly they see lots of options ahead of them, including even starting companies or joining other startups. I think that trend is going to continue, and that's another exciting prospect for Austin.
Okay, great. So time flies very fast. So I want to thank you for all the speakers' time. So let's close this one. I want to invite each of you to give our audience, mostly investors worldwide, a message. A message can be like a phrase, can be a one full sentence, maybe 2 sentences, just to take away. So use the same order we will kick off this meeting. Start with Krishna.
Market clearly in its ascendancy here. To add to one of the elements, as Andrew said, is getting really diversified, which we didn't get to talk about much, going from enterprise software to lots of amazing vertical industries and tech-enabled services and real estate tech and fintech and healthcare tech are all exploding in this market, and consumer talent also showing up. So it's setting up Austin to be a really diversified entrepreneurial ecosystem for the years and decades to come here. So exciting time to be an entrepreneur and be part of the entrepreneurial ecosystem, all over the place in this market.
So Eric.
Yeah, in just a couple sentences, I would say that Austin is really pulling talent here from all over the world, and that we're able to, being in its infancy, we're still able to kind of sculpt and mold this ecosystem the way we want. And we're not gonna, I think, make some of the same mistakes that we saw before. And we're taking a much deeper grassroots approach here in Austin that I think is gonna really be, it's really just gonna be fuel for the fire.
Thank you, Eric. Pavan.
Yeah, I mean, my advice to investors, both within US and globally, is it's the right time to get into Austin and back some great startups, founders, not just to, get some great ideas at decent valuations, but also to help them to reach out to larger markets. And also for international startups, if you're keen to access American market, as Austin is one of the most happening and the most appropriate place to start the journey.
Thank you. How about Andrew?
I'd say to investors around the world, the venture capital asset class is not as risky as it looks from a distance. I think that, when Krishna said diversification, I was thinking you diversify across so many startups, you lose some on some and you make money on others. COVID has shown that how resilient our portfolios have been on a group basis. And we're seeing 6x returns on our first fund and 12x cash on cash returns on our second fund. So I think there's half as many companies on the stock exchange now as there was 10 years ago. And there's 10x the amount of money in hedge funds trying to buy and sell public. So I think coming into the private markets is the most dynamic part of the market, and it's not as risky as a tourist might think it is.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, so I think the fun part of a venture capitalist's job is to see the non-obviousness in opportunities when they still look unglamorous, which is not easy, but intellectually, stimulating and career-wise, professionally-wise, it's just very challenging and exciting. So in my investment career, I saw some opportunities when they were turned down by lots of other investors, and we found the conviction to invest. And when they finally, proved their worthiness to others, the valuation in some cases gone up by 100x in a few years. So coming to Austin, it certainly is a big decision for investors, founders, corporations. In each case, there are different weighing factors. But I would definitely say, we are at the beginning of a very strong upward trend. So for those of you from outside Austin, outside Texas, I know there are a lot of questions to ask. So definitely spare some time when you feel comfortable and safe to travel. Just come visit, feel it. Once you are here on the ground, it will give you some fresh perspective. And I'm sure you'll share some excitement with the rest of us here.
Thank you. From all the friends, Roger.
What do they say? Don't mess with Texas. I'll leave it at that.
That's all. Okay, thank you. I'm so happy we have two very powerful co-hosts today, CS and Max, please.
I guess I could go. Well, I kind of echo the last message. I got a mug here that says, "Come and take it." No, just kidding. We're very friendly here. I want to reiterate what Krishna was saying. We need more diversity. Like, take the meeting, be friendly, but also don't mess with us.
Okay, cool. Max.
My final word is culture. I think there was a change in the culture of San Francisco, Silicon Valley that I saw in the past 10 years. And it was away from the riskiest, the most exciting, the most interesting, the most disruptive companies out there. And I think those people and that culture has shifted into Austin. So I think this is the place where we're going to see some of the most exciting and interesting companies, ideas coming out in the next 10 years.
Okay, great. Let's take a Zoom picture. Okay, Zoom picture means everybody's wave hands. At the end, this will be our official poster for the session. Thank you. Okay, so 3, 2, 1. Hello. Thank you. Okay, great. It's a great